The three Bs. We have Buttigieg, Bernie, and Biden battling it out right now. I'll tell you who's rising and who's falling. AOC, surprise, surprise, said something really stupid, and somebody from the first put her in her place. It actually wasn't me, though. Finally, Nancy Pelosi in planes. I'll explain. All that's coming up right now on I'm Right. It is realignment time for the Democratic primary, ladies and gentlemen, and here's what I mean by that. We have a new New Hampshire poll out there showing Pete Buttigieg in the lead. Another one shows him just barely losing to Bernie. You see, this has been Bernie's race easily for a while now. Bernie's been up 10. Well, it looks like Pete Buttigieg is going to compete very well in New Hampshire. Now, why? Everyone's asking, what happened? What happened? Races realign all the time, people. And what happened mainly is Joe Biden is in free fall without a parachute. As soon as Joe Biden came in fourth in Iowa, Joe Biden's, relatively, I want to say moderate, but that's a pretty strong word for today's Democratic Party. Biden's voters are leaving. They're looking around for a lifeboat. I got to get off the Titanic, and Pete Buttigieg is ripe for that. So he's picking up Biden's voters. That's why Pete is rising in the polls. Bernie is at war with the Democrat Party, doesn't seem to want to stand up for himself. Elizabeth Warren is nosediving as well. What Bernie needs is Elizabeth Warren to finally call it quits and head on back to the reservation so he can pick up her votes. He needs those socialist votes, and he needs them really, really badly. So, New Hampshire. But there's a new race tonight, a new debate tonight, I should say, and pay attention to this Democrat debate tonight. Far be it from me to tell you you should suffer through a Democrat debate. But tonight is the night you should, people, because Bernie and Pete should go after each other. That is what smart candidates would do. We're about to find out which one of them is smart. Gone are the days where all the candidates, as soon as they all jump in, they always do that thing. We should get along, right? We're friends. Hey, we're all friends here. No. Now is time to figure out who the candidate's going to be, and eventually they will start slicing at each other. And so Pete and Bernie are going to have a little slap fest tonight, I predict, and we should all watch it and laugh at the Democrat Party. Now, Newt Gingrich, obviously, everyone just calls him Newt. We're friends. Actually, that's not true. I've met him like once, but still. He took to Twitter, and he wants to know exactly why Iowa is screwing Bernie out of the win over there. He said, why is the Iowa Democratic Party working so hard to say Bernie Sanders did not win? He got more votes than Buttigieg on the first ballot and more votes than Buttigieg on the second ballot. What is going on with the Iowa Democratic Party? Look, everybody knows what's going on with the Iowa Democratic Party. It's the exact same thing that's going on with the National Democratic Party. One, they're a disorganized, completely disaster, I guess you would call it. Disarray would be another way. Garbage fire would actually probably be the way I would describe it. But here's the truth. They cannot allow Bernie Sanders to get the nomination for a lot of reasons. And one of the biggest ones is they don't think he can win. Another biggest one is everybody hates the freaking guy. He's just known to be a world-class jerk to everybody, and they don't think they can control him. Bernie Sanders believes in all that commie stuff he's saying. None of those other people believe it. That's why they've all flipped and flopped and flailed. Elizabeth Warren, I told you, she's completely just tanking as we speak. She's now taking every radical position you could possibly take on something. You remember, I believe it was this week or last week, Elizabeth Warren came out and she said, well, this transgender child is going to have to approve of my education secretary. Wait, what? She was on camera today trashing Israel and trashing AIPAC. She's just taking any desperate position you can take because she can feel it all slipping away, and it is all slipping away. She is the new Beto O'Rourke who will be out there every single day saying something weapons-grade stupid in order to gain relevance again. Oh, and did I mention, there's a scandal. Apparently, I believe it was 6 black women left the campaign because of racism.
I believe these women without any equivocation, and I apologize personally that they had a bad experience on the campaign. I really work hard to try to build a campaign and a work environment where it's diverse and open and everyone is welcome and celebrated and gets to bring their whole self to work every day. But I'm also very aware that racism and oppression in this country have left a long legacy. And it creates the kind of toxicity where people, power structures, people take advantage of other people. It's something for which we have to be constantly vigilant and constantly determined to do better. I take responsibility for this, and I'm working with my team to address these concerns.
It didn't sound like she was really taking responsibility. It sounded like she was kind of blaming it on everyone. Well, look, I mean, this happened, and I'm sorry it happened, but look, it's just a reflection of this racist society we have. I certainly can't take all the blame for it. Politicians, man, you gotta love them. Well, Joe Biden, you know, he took 4th place in Iowa, and obviously his campaign's in very deep trouble. He's not even flirting with the lead in New Hampshire, according to the polls. So Joe went back to the drawing board, and he decided he's going to turn things around and start being a little bit nicer to the voters. Or not.
Look, Senator Sanders, please. Well, so is everybody else's future. That's why in our administration we wiped out no more coal plants. That's why we spent. There is one in hand. We can't do it all at once. We're working on it, kid. We're working on it. Why don't you sit down? I promise you. Let's talk. Let's talk. It's not. Please.
Why don't you sit down? That's a real winning message. The voters love that. But look, if you're not going to yell at them to sit down, you might as well call them names. Here you go.
Senator Sanders and others are proposing Medicare. Don't act like the Trumpers, okay? All right, don't be like Trump. Please, we're on the same team. Don't be like Trump. I'll talk to you afterwards if you'd like to talk, okay?
He's just turned into a mean old man. And look, we've explained that several times. You don't need me to do it again. The guy is in 10 miles over his head. He's, had a really cushy life as a politician. As cushy as life could be as a politician in D.C. for that long, that's how cushy it's been for Joe Biden. Nobody challenged him as a senator from Delaware for 30 years. Nobody really challenged him as Obama's vice president. He was a walking gaffe machine, and everybody just kind of laughed about it. Even Obama laughed about it. Oh, gosh, Joe's kind of a moron. Well, he's in the big leagues now, and he's not ready for the big leagues now, and he's old, and he's tired, and he should be on a golf course in Florida with every other old person, and instead he's out there campaigning. And you know what's really funny? Joe Biden is clearly not prepared to deal with the new base. You say he has been around D.C. for 40 years, which is beyond comprehension, 40 years. Do you think the Democrat Party is just a little bit different today than it was 40 years ago? He wasn't getting screamed at like this at town halls for the last 40 years. He probably goes home every night and says, these freaking people are crazy. Guy's probably counting the seconds till he can bail. Well, of course, part of being a leftist these days is not just hating America, it's hating yourself and dealing with your own white guilt. Here, check out this montage.
The 3 frontrunners in most polls are all white men.
Yeah.
Is sexism playing a role still?
I think sexism absolutely plays a role.
I mean, I do think there is a gender piece here that we still suck at talking about.
It's something to see all 3 the top of the polls being led by 3 white men, though.
She had the double-edged sword of not just being a woman, but being an African-American woman.
I think it is very difficult for a woman of color, especially the first woman of color, to run for office.
I do think that women are still held to different standards as candidates.
Do you think there's a gendered issue here in terms of people not seeing you as the person to get it done?
I do think there's a double standard.
You are one of those people in the middle that everybody wants, it seems. But I think if you were a man, you'd be further ahead. I'm just saying that.
Why do you think white male candidates are doing better than any of the women candidates?
Well, I don't know. The Iowa caucus is essentially the perfect example of systemic racism.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you, normally I would mock all these, well, it's racism, it's definitely racism, but because this is the party of tearing each other apart and dividing one class against another, dividing one race against the other, I can't tell you how much I enjoy the fact they're ripping each other to shreds over this whole thing. They deserve it. They have gotten in bed with all these radical social activists, so you know what? Enjoy it, ladies and gentlemen. You're right, Democrats. It's not neither black enough, and there aren't enough women, and this is horribly racist. And you know what? You should just stay home this November. All of that may have made you uncomfortable, but I'm right. And we are going to have BearingArms.com's very own Cam Edwards up to give us an update on the gun grabbing in Virginia. Apparently there was some kind of debate on that this morning. Hang on for that. But first, BetDSI.com. I have been telling you that football is over, and I've been lamenting it at my house, and there's no more football, and it's terrible, right? But football's not over. The XFL is coming back. I'll be watching, and I'll be betting it at betdsi.com/Jesse. You need to go there today and make a deposit. And oh, did I mention Bitcoin works there too? If you're one of those Bitcoin people, and you can bet, NHL, Major League Baseball, basketball, UFC. Go check it out. BetDSI.com/Jesse. Use the promo code Jesse120, and you're not limited to sports, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to go bet on The Bachelor, yes, reality television, you can do that. If you want to bet on politics, maybe that'd be something that would interest my viewers, you can do that too. And don't worry if you tune into a game and you're like, oh gosh, it's the end of the first quarter, I should have put a bet on. No, you can bet continuously throughout the game at betdsi.com/Jesse. So go make a deposit, get your Jesse120 promo code in there, and get a matching 120%. betdsi.com. Joining me now is the king of all things guns in Virginia, Cam Edwards of BearingArms.com. Cam, what happened today in Virginia, or at least this morning? Are they finally voting on all this gun grabbing stuff?
Well, they've been voting on the gun grabbing stuff, but today was a big vote. Yeah, you're right. House Bill 961, which is the quote-unquote assault weapons ban. It's a ban on magazines over 12 rounds now for some reason, plus a ban on suppressors, trigger activators. And you're right. Yes, we had a vote in the House Public Safety Committee. It passed 12-9. There were 2 Democrats who joined every Republican on the committee in voting against this bill, which tells you that this is not a done deal in Virginia. This bill was watered down today, Jesse, in an attempt to try to drum up more support from Democrats, but this would still, even with the new language, turn the majority of Virginia gun owners into felons if they simply keep the magazines that they currently own right now.
All right, define watered down for me. What was it and what is it?
Sure. So originally, remember, we had this Senate bill that was introduced that banned the continued possession of semi-automatic rifles, right? Any gun that was determined to be a quote-unquote assault firearm. And actually, there were a lot of shotguns, even some handguns that would have applied to. That's what prompted the Second Amendment sanctuary movement in the state of Virginia. And they pulled that bill back. And they said, all right, now we're going to have this House Bill 961. Now you can keep your guns, but you have to register them and yourself with the state police. But you can't keep your magazines, you can't keep your suppressors, you can't keep your trigger activators. So today what they did was they said, all right, we're going to drop the registration requirement for the quote-unquote assault weapons. You won't be able to buy one. You won't be able to transfer one. You won't be able to manufacture one in the state of Virginia if this becomes law, but you would not have to register the guns that you own. You would not have to turn them over. They also removed suppressors from the list of banned items. So you would no longer be able to purchase a new suppressor, but if you own a suppressor right now, they're saying, well, we'll allow you to keep it. And really, those are the 2 big changes. This doesn't address the fundamental issue with this bill, which is that we're talking about banning the most commonly produced rifles in America today. We're talking about banning the most commonly owned magazines in the country today. Both of these things clearly infringe on the rights of Virginians, because even though they're now taking this registration requirement out, with a ban on new purchases of quote-unquote assault weapons, what they're saying is that these guns aren't protected under the Second Amendment. The only reason Virginians would be allowed to continue to own them is because the government is giving them permission to do so. Well, that's not what rights are all about, and that's why this bill still is not worthy of support.
No, it's madness. I have to tell you, Cam, as you may imagine, I own 1 or 2 magazines, and I don't own any, at least any that I can think of, that holds less than 12 rounds. That's the purpose of a magazine. It's so it can hold lots of rounds. Now, I'm asking this may be a tough one to answer. Do you think with this being watered down, do you think it passes now? What's your read on this whole thing? Do you think this will back people off enough, especially the registration thing?
I think it's going to be close in the House. I still don't think it has the support in the state Senate. But Democrats have also given themselves some more wiggle room, right? Don't be surprised if all of a sudden now they say, all right, well, you can keep the magazines that you own, but going forward, you won't be able to buy any magazines that are larger than 12 rounds. They're giving themselves a few more things to take out to try to earn the support of Democrats. I think it's going to be very close. I think gun owners in Virginia need to be involved right now. They need to be engaged, contact their delegate, get ready to contact your senator. But it's clear, Jesse, that Democrats, what they want to do is they want to send something that they can call a gun ban to Governor Northam's desk so that he can sign it. They don't really care about the details. Gun control groups were cheering today, even though this bill was watered down. Now, they don't like those changes, but they love the PR victory this gives them, right? In the NRA's backyard, the Brady campaign said, a House committee passed an assault weapons ban. That's what they want. They don't care about how this would impact violent crime. They don't care how this would impact, well, they really don't care how this would impact gun owners. They can always go back for more. What they want right now is that PR victory so that they can then take that message all across the country in 2020 and say, Americans are demanding change. Why, look what we did in Virginia with the NRA's headquarters.
Cam, how did we lose Virginia? Was it the leftist D.C. sprawl? Was it immigration? I mean, you're there. How did we lose the birthplace of freedom?
Well, first of all, we lost it by about 6,000 votes statewide in 2019, spread out across dozens of House and Senate races. So it's not like the state of Virginia all of a sudden turned up and suddenly turned blue. We had some turnout problems in rural Virginia. We had sorry here, Jesse. We had items that, I just got a new phone and I have no idea how to turn it off. All of a sudden, somebody started trying to FaceTime with me. I know. I'm sorry about that. Anyway.
Look, if you need to take it, just put her on, Cam. We'll all talk at the same time.
I think John Pop, so we could have a little, group conversation. Anyway, going back to the November elections, what happened, I think there were several factors. Turnout in rural Virginia was not what it needed to be. We had several counties where turnout was less than 50%. That's not going to get it done if we're going to try to, overwhelm the numbers that are coming out of Northern Virginia. We also saw redistricting that benefited Democrats. And we saw Michael Bloomberg pour millions of dollars into these closed legislative races targeting suburban swing districts. And, I think his money was able to buy a couple of these seats, unfortunately. But I got to tell you, Jesse, gun owners, we are awake now in Virginia. We are getting ready for the 2020 elections. We've got a U.S. Senate seat that's up, in addition to all of our congressional seats, and of course, Donald Trump. And then in 2021, I think we're going to take back the legislature.
Well, let's hope so. I love the state of Virginia, as you well know. All right, Cam, let me ask you. Then this is a little bit difficult of a question to answer. Does the Republican Party have an organizational problem in Virginia? I have heard this from more than one friend of mine, that the Republican Party maybe got a little fat and lazy, maybe got a little complacent, and the Democrat Party, you already mentioned Bloomberg, they were aggressive, they're out there pounding on the doors, and the state Republican Party just kind of didn't.
I do think that there's an organizational disadvantage, and part of that I think is baked into the cake. If you look at conservatism, we are basically rugged individualists, right? And so trying to get us to all get organized and work together and take orders from people, it's kind of like herding cats. So there is that. But on the other hand, yes, I do think that we do need to see some changes within the Virginia GOP. And again, a lot of that comes from the grassroots level. If you've never been to your county Republican meeting, go. I guarantee you that they'll be happy to see you. And I've been to a lot of my county Republican meetings. I've been to a couple of other neighboring county Republican meetings. Look, it would not take many activists in one particular county to all of a sudden turn that organization around, take it over. And if you do that in enough counties, then I think that you can change the state party as well. I don't think there's anything that's dramatically wrong with the GOP, but I do think it needs some reinvigoration, and they need to understand, those party leaders need to understand where the voters of Virginia are right now. That's one of the other things that I think really hurt us in November, is that we had some Republican politicians who backed things like red flag laws. They backed things like universal background checks, and they lost because that's not what conservatives were asking them to do. Conservatives were asking them to stand up and support their Second Amendment rights, not sell them out to Michael Bloomberg. So if the Republican Party in Virginia gets that message, and I think that largely they have, I think we're going to be in pretty good shape this year and next.
Cam Edwards, bearingarms.com. Cam, give our best to the missus, please.
I certainly will, Jesse. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Next time I'll figure out how to turn off my phone before we start talking.
Okay, Boomer. All right. We have AOC saying something dumb. I know. Stop the presses. And we have an all-world response from the first very own Rob Smith. I've got all that coming up for you in just a second. In this country, we have a real separation of ideologies, and there is something on the left that I've always been extremely bothered by and will always be bothered by. And look, the truth of the matter is this, people. Before we get into AOC's stupid comments and Rob Smith's great reply and all that, I'm going to get to that in a second. We have to understand, yes, you should help out your fellow man. You should help out your fellow man. Help out your friend. Help out your neighbor. Help out your parents. Help out your children. That's the way we're supposed to operate as human beings on this earth. We are not supposed to throw all of our money and labor at the government and just hope that some nameless, faceless government politician and bureaucrat somewhere is going to do the best they can to help somebody up. But the reason the left will never, ever, ever subscribe to that way of thinking is it takes away their power. Do you think it's an accident? The left that wants the government to grow, the left that wants all the power, the left that wants a strong, centralized government to command and control of the society. Do you think it's an accident that they also want to convince every single American citizen that, look, you really can't do it on your own? I'm sorry, look, if you're down and out, you're down and out. Unless the government comes and helps, you're basically screwed. And what's so funny is the stories of people finding a way to come out of the darkest, darkest pit to reach the highest levels of success. They're everywhere. I will tell you, I live in suburban Texas here in the Houston area. All the richest guys I know, not one of them has a college degree. They grew up big families, poor, grinding it out somewhere, started a small business, trying and trying and trying and trying again and failing and then getting back up and trying and trying and trying again. That is the American story. The American story is a family throwing the wife and your 10 kids in the back of a covered wagon and heading out west to brave all the weather and the Indians and everything else underneath the sun just for the chance at making something better of yourself, just for the chance at making it big. That's the American story. My goodness, that's how we landed here. I just want to set off across the Atlantic and maybe die on the way and almost definitely die when I get there for the chance at making something better of yourself. That's what we are. That's what we are. That's our DNA. And the left absolutely hates it. So here's leftist brainchild AOC with one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life.
Ms. Hutchinson, I also want to thank you about bringing up the poverty draft and this idea of a bootstrap. You know, this idea and this metaphor of a bootstrap started off as a joke because it's a physical impossibility to lift yourself up by a bootstrap, by your shoelaces. It's physically impossible. The whole thing is a joke.
That woman is in the United States House of Representatives. I just want to, you know what? Guys, play that one more time. And before you play it, I just want everybody watching again, before you hear this a second time, just imagine. There are 435 members of the United States House of Representatives. The United States of America is the wealthiest, most powerful country in the history of the world. We are a beacon of light and freedom for all of the world. And this person is in the United States House of Representatives.
Ms. Hutchinson, I also want to thank you about bringing up the poverty draft and this idea of a bootstrap. You know, this idea and this metaphor of a bootstrap started off as a joke because it's a physical impossibility to lift yourself up by a bootstrap, by your shoelaces. It's physically impossible. The whole thing is a joke.
I just don't know. Well, we have a contributor on the first. I'm sure you know him. I'm sure you've seen him. His name is Rob Smith, and he begs to differ.
I grew up in the working class community of Akron, Ohio, and was raised by a single mother who was yes on government assistance for a small point in time. when I was very young after my mother and father divorced. Although we didn't have much money or access to a whole lot of resources, she worked very hard to provide for her children. Like many who grew up in Akron, Ohio, I attended some of the lowest performing and underfunded schools in the neighborhood. Disaffected teachers would routinely come to class unprepared, and my counselors had little idea of what to do with a student who quite obviously didn't have an athletic scholarship ready and available for him upon graduation. What we did have in our poor working class neighborhood, however, was a strong sense of community and an undying belief in self. I am living a life far beyond what my high school education and upbringing would have suggested, and I wouldn't have been able to accomplish any of these things had my mentality and beliefs about self been any different. If I had succumbed to the soft bigotry of low expectations, or to any of the rhetoric from elected officials who wish to substitute the role that strong individuals and communities play in supporting each other with that of an all-powerful, unaccountable, and bloated government, where would I be today? Granted, it wasn't until I started to reject the messages that seek to take control and responsibility out of the hands of the individual and put that into the government that I saw my greatest personal and career successes.
Rob Smith out there dropping napalm. Good job, Rob. And you know what? He's right. He's 100% right. And that story of his is an American tale. And it's not a tale that's only for a certain skin color. It's not a tale that's only for a certain religion. That is an American tale. Americans do that all the time. And I think it's wonderful, and it's one of the things I hate the most about the leftists is trying to convince people that they can't. That is not the message you need to be sending to the next generation. That's not the message you need to be sending to our kids. Well, actor, I know him a little bit. His name is James Woods. He's long been a firebrand critic of the left, and he retired from social media for a while. Decided to make his comeback yesterday. Apparently, AOC just couldn't keep him away, and he brought a doozy. Quote, "I've tried so hard this past year to live without the wealth of knowledge available on Twitter, but this kind of blazing insight can be found nowhere else. So I'm back. Hashtag AOC still a moron." All right. You remember Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, the guy who, well, he tried to unseat the President of the United States because the President didn't do the things he wanted done on the phone call? He's a Lieutenant Colonel on the National Security Council, and he thinks he's in charge of the President? Yeah, apparently that's what he thinks. So rumors are flying around here that he's about to get canned. He may have already gotten canned. We just haven't gotten word yet. Let me tell you something, people. Not only should he get canned, President Trump needs to do an honest audit of everybody who surrounds him. While I've been a huge supporter of his presidency so far, he has blown me away. He has surprised me. He's been way better than I ever thought he would be. There are two major problems he has. One, he spends way too much money and he keeps signing these gigantic swampy spending bills that get put on his desk. Two, the people he has around him are awful. Now, they're getting better now. But ladies and gentlemen, how does Omarosa ever get a job in the White House? Come on now. How does Rex Tillerson become Secretary of State? And how has President Trump not decided already to do an audit of the leftist scumbags who think they should be in charge, who continue to try to kneecap his presidency? Figure out who your friends are there, Mr. President, and toss every single one of them. It should look like the daggone killing fields, figuratively, of course, by the time you're done firing everybody. Fire Vindman and let him be one of about 100 people you get rid of. You know what? While we're at it, let's just dump a bunch of bureaucracies. I'll help you out if you need it, Mr. President. All right, we're not quite done yet. Hang on. Joining me now is my old friend, and she works at America's Voice Live, and she's also the founder of the Hollywood Conservative, Amanda Head. Amanda, what's the Hollywood Conservative? I didn't think there were any of those out there.
Yeah, well, you know what? When I first started the Hollywood Conservative, I kind of dragged my feet on paying for the domain And I figured that I was safe in doing that because no one else was going to be looking for the Hollywood Conservative, which ultimately ended up being the HollywoodConservative.us, but it's an aggregate news site. I personally curate articles that I think that my folks would be interested in, and we throw them up on the site and we provide a little summary. I've got a staff over on the East Coast who runs the back end of the website, because when it comes to tech, even though I'm a millennial, I am no good at that. So,
Amanda, Iowa caucuses, complete disaster. Trump's State of the Union, everybody loved it. Then Trump gets acquitted. It's obviously been a rough week for Democrats. Now we have a new jobs report out this morning. I believe it's 225,000 new jobs added. In the meantime, Joe Biden is in free fall in his campaign. Bernie Sanders is taking over. How are Democrats this unprepared? If you hate Trump this much for this long, how are you not ready for prime time?
Yeah, isn't it amazing that in 2016 they ran their absolute worst candidate, Hillary Clinton? And generally when that happens, when you lose an election, you do a little bit of introspection and political inventory and try to figure out where you went wrong and then proceed from there. But it seems that they've actually doubled down on Hillary Clinton's ideology, and they're moving forth with these candidates who frankly aren't viable. And the Iowa thing, to me, the fact that the DNC is now demanding that they recanvass the state. Jesse, I know you've got 2 boys and you had siblings growing up. It reminds me of when I was younger and I would try to beat my brothers at something and I would inevitably lose. And I would say, okay, best 2 out of 3. They didn't get the result they wanted the first time around in Iowa, so now they're trying again. And now you've got 63% approval of the economy, which is the highest of any president in the last 20 years. 49% approving of President Trump across the board in a Gallup poll. That's a new high for President Trump. The emoluments clause that was thrown out. I mean, it is a bad week for Democrats, and I am loving it.
They can't allow Bernie to have the nomination, right? But at the same time, I mean, if you screw him again, my goodness, his supporters are going to go vote for Trump. They're going to be so mad this time. How does that pan out?
Yeah, and in 2016, you had a lot of Bernie supporters who were conned into voting for any Democrat. You remember the campaign that they were running, oh, sorry, Bernie supporters, but vote Democrat anyway. This time around, they are not doing that. This is a case of, shame us once, shame on you, shame us twice, shame on me. They're not going to be fooled again. They're going to pull away from the party and they're going to vote for an independent candidate, and they are going to completely torch the Democrat platform.
Alexander Vindman is out. He is fired. He got escorted out of the White House today. So tell me something. Why has President Trump, with all the successes, and I've been thrilled with so many of them, why has he struggled so much with getting all the garbage out of the White House? There have been so many bad hires by him. He can't be absolved. I mean, Omarosa in the White House, come on now. He has all these people constantly undermining his presidency. Why can't he get these people out?
It's a 2 or 3-fold answer. The quilt of Washington, D.C., the Beltway quilt, is very, very tightly weaved. And you have people who have government jobs. They are not elected officials. They have been in those positions for years. They are in a pseudo-tenured position. It's hard. And also it's hard to find out. It's hard to find out with this new brand of progressivism on the left. It's hard to find out those people who, were brought in during, the Carter administration or the Clinton administration. These people who typically are blue dog Democrats, classical liberals. It's hard to really discern whether those people are still those people or if they, kind of got ushered in under the Obama administration and are full force anti-Trump. And then you've got the issue of people who are bona fide Obama holdovers, and Washington, our federal government is like 37% larger than our founding fathers intended, and that's actually a very conservative number. So it's just, it's sheer numbers, tens of thousands of people. And I don't know how you weed that out. Hopefully with the second term, we can at least make a dent in the swamp.
What do you want to see out of President Trump for this campaign season? I think his campaign team's doing an excellent job. Here's what I'm worried about, Amanda. Everything's going right for us right now. Economy's churning and burning. Democrats are obviously embarrassing themselves, but it's February. It's February 7th. We got a long way until November. I'm worried about complacency. I'm worried about our side just thinking we got this. I'm worried about just thinking we can coast to a win. What do you want to see between now and November?
Yeah, we actually had Jenna Ellis on the show, I think it was last week, and we were talking to her. She's President Trump's deputy campaign, I guess, communications director. And I said the exact same thing to her. I said, Democrats, they were obviously colluding with the New York Times to let these Bolton pieces from his book drip, 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 drip. And I said the same thing to her. I said, there's a lot of time between now and November. Democrats are not going to stop. They are not going to stop utilizing the propaganda arm of their party, which is New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, all of these networks. They're not going to stop using that. But the good news is they did the same thing to other Republican presidents, not necessarily to this degree, but as you know, typically and historically, a first-term president enjoying a good economy can sail into his second term. So assuming that there's nothing absolutely bombshell, which, even with that, I mean, you all remember the Billy Bush tape that came out right before President Trump was elected. I don't know what can be so bombshell to throw this economy off kilter, because I think it's just too good. And I think that, I hope that there's a portion of America, you can't touch the fringe left. There really isn't any point in trying to affect their point of view. But for a lot of people on the left, maybe center left, I hope that they are starting to realize, and polls are showing that it's trending in this direction, that the impeachment nonsense, the impeachment sham, if you want to call that, was just that. It was a sham. And it is the Democrats' refusal to show up to work in the House of Representatives and get things done. Look, even for the State of the Union address, folks like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, these people who didn't show up, it's your job. You get paid almost $200,000 a year to show up to Congress and do your job, and you can't even show up for something like that.
What happened to California? I guess a better question would be, can we ever get it back? And this is the reason I ask, because it's just like Virginia. A lot of states, I admit, I'm not big on. I don't really know much about them, but I've spent enough time in California to know. I mean, it just is the most beautiful place in the country, and it sucks that the radical left completely owns it. Can we ever get it back?
Yeah, I'm going to coin a new phrase. Virginia is what I would call get backable. I think that Virginia has a much higher likelihood of actually turning purple and maybe one day red again, because it is surrounded by, it's there close to the South. I'm hoping that, rather than that migration from the Beltway to Virginia, maybe we can have some Southerners take one for the team and move up to Virginia to start to affect policy. I saw a lot of people in 2018 with the hashtag flip California red or turn California red. I'm sorry, I don't see it happening. And I appreciate all of you, media Republicans rushing to fill these seats. I do think that we can win back some seats, the seats in Orange County, seat in Santa Clarita. I do think that we can get those seats back. But when it comes to Sacramento and a super majority of Democrats, I don't think it's going to happen. I'm sorry. I would rather take the money, because I was having a discussion about a particular woman who is running for Nancy Pelosi's seat. And I said, it's not a viable campaign. And I wish that, rather than giving money to those campaigns that aren't viable, that we would reallocate that money. You've got to figure out the campaigns that are winnable. And rather than throwing money at those seats, the Nancy Pelosi seats, the DIFI, all of those that are basically establishment Democrats, they've been there forever, and they probably will be forever until they are 6 feet under. I would rather throw money at the winnable campaigns. And Orange County, Santa Clarita, some of these Central Valley locations, those seats are winnable. But as far as flipping California blue, it ain't going to happen.
Amanda Head with America's Voice Live. Appreciate you very much. I'll see you soon.
My pleasure.
All right. We got one more. Hang on. If there's one thing I have always enjoyed, it is a salty airplane message, either when they do it in the skywriting or when they drag that gigantic sign behind a plane. And oftentimes, it's the local used car dealership. Come by today, 0% interest, get ripped off. but sometimes people do it really, really sharp. I remember it was a few years back, some guy had some little, Piper Cub plane, and he flew it over a beach, and he flew one behind it that said, "Where's your plane, peasants?" One of the funniest things I've ever seen. Well, Deanna Lorraine is a congressional candidate running against Nancy Pelosi in her district, and she decided to get a little bit salty because Nancy Pelosi ripping up that speech at the State of the Union, all indications are that's actually a crime. Apparently that's an official document, and that is a crime. So Miss Lorraine had a little fun with it. In case you can't see, the sign says Pelosi for prison. Do we have a close-up of that so people can see it? Oh gosh, that's good. Look, immaturity makes me laugh. Trolling horrible people like Nancy Pelosi makes me laugh. And because she's terrible, that probably bothered her. Let's hope Miss Lorraine can unseat her. All right, we are going to come back and do this all again on Monday. You have a good, safe weekend. Feel free to watch reruns of me all weekend long if you miss me, but I'll be back. See you.